Hello, and welcome to our program Where God Weeps, a program where we speak about the situation of the suffering and persecuted church around the world. Nigeria is a highly diverse country, and since independence from British colonial rule in 1960, it has been grappling with a mixed and deeply divided society. Although the country has experienced periods of relative peace, tensions between its socio-cultural and political groups have sometimes degenerated into ethnic religious violence, of which the most well known is that of Boko Haram terrorism in the northeast. Since 2014, however, there has been a spike in violent clashes between Fulani herdsmen and crop farming communities occurring mostly in the so-called middle belt of the country. These conflicts have resulted in high human and material losses and currently constitute one of the most credible threats to the security and stability of the state. The violence is compounded by the fact that the parties to the conflict are neatly divided along ethnic and religious lines. While the Fulani cattle herders are mainly Muslims, the crop farming communities of the Middle Belt and southern parts of Nigeria are largely Christians. To tell us more about this explosive situation, it's my privilege to welcome Father Paulinus Nweke, a professor at the Gregorian University and expert in conflict resolution. Welcome, Father Paulinus, and thank you for being with us here today in our program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Father Paulinus, you are an expert in conflict resolution, particularly the issues in Nigeria that we know about, the question of the Fulani in the Middle Belt. Can you tell us a little bit about what do we understand by this area and the ethnic groups that we're talking about?
Actually, the Fulani problem is not just in the Middle Belt, but it's a problem that is cutting across the whole of Nigeria. Particularly why we talk much about the Middle Belt is because the problem is more at the moment in the Middle Belt, but you've seen the problem also in the southeast. And there are cases also, just isolated cases in Rivers State, Bayelsa, which are deep down into the south of Nigeria.
How would you describe the environment? Just to give us a picture of what is the landscape like? What are we talking about when we're talking about this middle part of Nigeria?
Around Plateau State, it's called Plateau because there are hills. The landscape there is quite mountainous, especially when we talk about the areas of Plateau State where these conflicts have been taking place. In terms of vegetation, it's a savanna area with green grass, especially during the rainy season. So you could see that there are sources of water for the cattle. Coming to Benue State, there is a famous river Benue, and the Benue Valley is a rich valley, very, very rich agriculturally. So the land is very good, and both for crop farming and also for the grasses that grow around that place because of the river around it. So you could see why that place is quite attractive also.
Exactly.
So,
I wanted you're painting a picture of a very rich, agriculturally rich and economically, potentially very important economic area of Nigeria. So there's already an economic interest in possessing the land in a certain way.
Of course. Like Benue State is called the food basket of the nation. Benue State is, as far as I'm concerned, is the richest part of Nigeria agriculturally. You go to Benue State, you have all kinds of fruits, very cheap. In Plateau State, you still have a lot because the climate is quite is semi-temperate in the sense that it's not as hot as the other parts of Nigeria. So you can find some of the things that are grown even in Europe, like apples. You find potatoes. You find tomatoes.
Right.
They are grown very well in that place, and vegetables.
To the people themselves, Can you tell us a little bit about the Fulani as a people, and where do they hail from? Where do they come from?
It is very difficult to ascertain the origin of the Fulani. It's a group, an ethnic group that cuts across West and Central Africa. They are predominantly pastoralists. In fact, it is said that they are the largest single pastoral ethnic group in the world, numbering up to 20 million.
And when we speak of pastoralists, what do we understand by pastoralists?
They are cattle rearers.
So cattle herders.
Cattle herders, yeah.
Right. And they move with the cattle.
Yes, they move with the cattle. But then we've got to make a difference, because it is not a homogeneous group. It is quite heterogeneous, especially in their lifestyle. There are the urban Fulani and the rural Fulani. The urban Fulani live in urban centers, and some of them are doing very well economically, politically, and socially. They are educated. Then there are the rural ones, who are the ones who rear cattle. So I think the major issue is with the rural Fulani, who are nomads or semi-nomads.
Father, you've mentioned that the Fulani, although they're politically active, the issue lies more with the rural movement of cattle, and the movement of cattle, the Fulani following their cattle from one region into the next. What other populations are they impacting in particular, and where is the tension that's starting to develop between the herders and the other populations?
Okay, for what I may call the other party to the conflict, since the Fulanis are one party, we have a second party. Both of them form the primary parties to the conflict. It's not also a homogeneous group, because Nigeria, like we know, it's a multicultural society with a lot of ethnic groups, very multi-ethnic, and at least there are 300 ethnic groups at least in Nigeria. They speak distinct languages, especially in the middle belt. The middle belt is the most heterogeneous part of Nigeria. So when they are coming, when the Fulani come, they meet with several different groups.
And these ethnic groups would be mostly agriculturalists. These would be farmers.
Yes, they're farmers because they live mostly in the villages.
It seems to me that the problem has been aggravating over the last years. Yes. So what are the reasons why the situation is getting worse?
Fulanis have been migrating, but it was quite seasonal, in the sense that they were, during the dry season, they moved down south. So they moved from the north towards the middle belt and down. And the relationship initially, all these years, has been quite cordial, mutually beneficial, and they have been working well, living well. Why? Because generally the Fulani used to move from between December and May, when the crop farmers would have harvested their crop and the land is left to fallow.
Right.
So when they come in, they eat the cattle eat the residue, what is left, and leave their dungs.
They fertilize.
To fertilize. So it was a mutual relationship, because they were coming during the dry season and everything would have been harvested by then. So there was no problem of coming and destroying farm produce or what is planted. And it was mutual.
And
so
what changed?
With time, the Fulanis themselves started settling in some of the communities. And it was no problem yet, because there was plenty land. So the communities could allow them settle around, in the bushes around. And there was no problem. From there they go and pasture their flock and their herds and come back. But the real thing that changed was that things began to become difficult because land was no longer sufficient. Why? First of all, the problem of climate change. The northern part of Nigeria became drier, and even the rains dropped, and increasingly low rainfall. So they couldn't stay there even during the rainy season, because they didn't even have enough pasture.
So they're coming, Fulani, which normally would have not moved into that area,
Yes.
are coming
Yes,
south.
they wouldn't have moved into that area during the rainy season. They are coming south and they are remaining there now because
There's no water.
No water, no pasture. So you could see the pressure there coming in. And because they are always present, there is the possibility of their cattle straying into the farms of the local people, the agriculturalists.
Now, this has borne or developed into violent conflicts. What do we understand by violent conflict today between the Fulani and the agriculturalists or the crop farming communities?
The violence is simply that now they are using arms, they're killing each other. People are dying, property is being destroyed, and people are getting displaced.
Are there any numbers that we are aware of, let's say, over the last 2 years, of what kind of numbers are we talking about of people who have been dying according to this conflict?
The International Crisis Group presented a report, or 2 reports, for 2016 and 2017. And in their reports they said the killings as a result of the clashes between herdsmen and farming communities is even, the number is even higher than what we record from Boko Haram insurgency.
Which is very highly
is contained,
discussed and addressed in the northeast part of Nigeria.
Yes, Boko Haram is more known in the world. But the
issue is actually more important in this middle belt.
Yes, in recent times, the killings from the clashes, it's even more. They are even higher than what Boko Haram is doing now. The number.
Personally, have you not necessarily witnessed, but have you felt the impact yourself?
Of course. Even though I currently I don't live in Nigeria, but I visit Nigeria every year at least once a year. And in my own village, the village where my parents hail from, in the southeast, there are Fulanis who are settled there. And I was in the village during my vacation last month. And one of the problems the people were raising was that they couldn't go to the farms that are outside the immediate vicinity because they are afraid. Either they will be killed, but most often, women and girls are being raped, so they don't step out any longer. Even the villagers are looking as if they are under siege. You can only farm from within your vicinity. And that happens everywhere now that you have those Fulani settlements around.
And the Fulani are taking over those outlying farms? Or are they just leaving are they settling on those outlying farms?
They are afraid. The local people are afraid. But you could also see that the Fulanis are also having a field day, in the sense that they have free land now, open space, and they just send out their cows, and the cattle are there grazing.
As far as the eye can see?
Yes, as you could see that, because I was in Bokos, I could see Fulani cattle everywhere. You just go to up a hill and you see the whole place. You'll be wondering what is happening. Where are the villagers? The villagers are no more.
There is also a religious element to this issue, which, in fact, sometimes in the media has been overplayed, if I understand correctly. It's often been painted as a Muslim-Christian issue, which is not correct. However, it is true that there is a religious component. Can you give us now a little bit of an understanding of this religious component?
Like you rightly said, apparently, it is not religious. It is not religious. It's an economic conflict over grazing land, water. These are issues. But when you look at other things that come in, because when you are doing a conflict analysis, you've got to know that it's not just the outsider perspective. You, as a researcher, what you see, but you also need to hear from the people the insider perspective. You need to hear their voices, what they are saying, and how they perceive the conflict, because perception matters a lot in conflict. And then you also try to see what actions have been, or especially from the government, from the authority, their actions and inactions, what is happening that drive these kind of things or make people feel that way. So when we say it is not, basically if we see it's not about Christians, Muslims burning churches? No, because there are indigenous Muslims too. So it's not Christian and Muslim, no. But it has religious implications. Why? The people, especially when they get displaced, the local farmers, when they get displaced, they don't see it just as an ethnic cleansing, because I've heard some of them tell me, but this is ethnic cleansing, this is ethnic cleansing. They don't see it only as an ethnic cleansing, because unfortunately, the ethnicity and the religious affiliation of the two parties coincide with either Islam or Christianity. Fulanis are mainly Muslims. The local farming communities are largely Christians. So when there is an attack on a local farming community, it's like, it's not just attacking the ethnic group, but also an attempt to wipe Christianity. And there is also this whole thing about Islamizing Nigeria. There was a jihad that started around 1804 and ended by 1808, and it was supposed to be a move towards the purification of Islam. That was what the leader said, Othman Danfodio. But he discovered that they went beyond Muslim communities of that time and came down to the Middle Belt, and we are ransacking Middle Belt communities that were not even Muslims, trying to convert them to Islam. So that has been there, it's stuck there in the brain.
And the word caliphate was also used at that time between 1804 and 1807. The word caliphate there was an attempt to establish a caliphate.
But there is a caliphate in Nigeria, the Sokoto Caliphate.
Exactly.
It's still there.
And when we hear about ISIS in Syria, ISIS in Iraq, the establishment of a caliphate in Iraq, naturally people start to make the relationship and say, is this also another attempt?
Yes, and that is what they are asking now. Could this be a second jihad? Could this be a continuation of what was left before by other means? Because when you're talking about even the persecution of Christians, we've got to know that there are overt and covert persecutions.
What do you mean by both? Overt and
overt,
covert?
It could be direct. You could see laws, you could see Christians being killed, and it could be indirect.
Discrimination,
marginalization of communities. And sometimes even communities that are suffering, nobody looks at them. I'm talking about the perception now, what the people are saying, because we've got to also hear from them what they are saying. Some of them feel as if they have been abandoned by the government, especially the federal government, that has all the resources, especially security-wise, because governors in Nigeria are not in control of any security.
It's a federal issue.
It's a federal issue. Now, they're asking the president to intervene. Unfortunately, for some time, the president was quite lackadaisical about it. He was nonchalant. He didn't
pick it up.
He didn't pick it up. Even when he said some point he said he had ordered the Inspector General of Police to move to Benue State, which is up to now a hotspot, so that he can be there on ground to work on the conflict. The commissioner did not move. And
he was not reprimanded.
He was not reprimanded. Secondly, the attitude of the president also towards the resolution of the problem. You could see that very often they talk more about what to do for the Fulani, how to rehabilitate the Fulani, but what happens to the Christian community, the crop farming communities that are largely Christian? It's as if they have been forgotten. Nothing is said about the rehabilitation of those people.
I will ask you a provocative question. Is it because the president himself is Fulani, and many of his ministers are Fulani? Would you say that this is also playing a role within this issue?
The Constitution requires that the president appoints at least a minister from each state, and he does that. But the composition of his security team, the top security officers in Nigeria, at some point, at least, I don't know whether he has recomposed them now after his second election. But before now, they were all northerners and Muslims largely. So what kind of impression are you giving? You are not able to respond, or you are unwilling to respond to this crisis. All your security, the top guys who are taking charge of security are Muslims, and this is a heterogeneous society. You help in stoking even conspiracy theories. And you don't blame the people for suspecting that.
Yes.
Because you've got to do things. You are in a heterogeneous society. You know it. You know that religion and ethnicity are two salient factors in socio-political life in Nigeria.
And you need to stand by the rule of law.
Yes. And you talk about the rule of law too. How many people have been prosecuted? At least I have people who have been tracking some of the conflicts. I look at the crimes committed. But when I look at some of the events, the track of events, the things the people that I'm working with, agencies that I'm working with give me, you could see the names, this one, the suspected Fulani herdsmen, and this and that. At the end of the day, who has been prosecuted? Who has been prosecuted? Even top politicians have made statements. The Fulani group, the umbrella group, the Mieti Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria, at some point even admitted that they committed certain crimes in public. But what was done to them? Nothing.
Father, how can we help?
In my opinion, the first thing is prayer. We are Christians. I believe in the power of prayer. I believe in miracles. I believe that God can change things when we ask Him and we really pray about it. So I'm asking the Christian world to pray for us. The second thing is we want a Nigeria that will work for everybody. We are not out to convert people by force. Conversion comes, it's an invitation, and the response should be free. So we are not out to convert people by force. So what we are asking for also is deep reforms, deep institutional reforms, reform in the security sector. What is the police doing? Do you know that some of the villagers are not comfortable either with the soldiers or with the police? I've been working on conflicts. Sometimes you discover that one ethnic group prefers to have soldiers around them, another ethnic group prefers to have police around them. So you can see that sometimes they are already divided. So we also need to have reforms in our electoral system. We have, I will say that the Nigerian president is one of the most powerful presidents in the world. Democratically elected, we're not talking about the dictators. Because of the system. It's a winner takes all system. He decides what he wants. There are no incentives for compromise.
So structurally there's an issue.
Yeah, so there we have basic structural issues. Our problems especially are systemic because the president, for example, does not have incentives for dialogue, for compromise. There are systems that the president knows that he must make compromises, otherwise his government falls. But he has all the power. That is why he can keep people from his ethnic group or from his own regional group, and
he has no reason to change.
Doesn't care. He has, people have been talking, can you change? Even with the crisis in the last 4 years, people told him it is time to change your team. Your security team, change them, try another group. He never changed any. There's no incentive. So we need those kind of reforms. If the international community will help, then, like I said, we have been talking so much in Nigeria, the government has been talking so much about how to rehabilitate the Fulani, how to keep the Fulani, whether through ranching or through colonies or whatever. But how about the farmers?
What do we do for them?
What do we do for them? How do we get them back to their communities? Some of them have left their communities. Some of them are just there looking at, look, communities are gone, they are out of their homes, they are also seeing their sacred places being desecrated, their churches are burned, their tombs are being desecrated. They feel it. They are looking at their land, they can't go in, you just come and look, but you can't go near there. Right. I was in a community where the majority is Christian, but I was told that in that community, you can't even ride a certain type of motorcycle because the Fulani will not allow that.
They will know and they will take it.
They will take it. They will not allow you to do that. You can't do that. It's a whole lot of intimidation and people living in fear.
Father Paulinus, our time has come to an end. The topic is enormous. And I think, as we've mentioned before, prayer is at this moment, and concrete action through the steps that you've taken, not only on the larger picture, but also through the support of the Church, the education of the next generation of Christian leaders, working for the common good. And thank you for working for the common good in your country. And thank you for having been with us today in our program.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today in our program, Where God Weeps. If you'd like to know more about the work of Father Paulinus, the situation of the Catholic Church in Nigeria and the situation of the Fulani, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.